Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. I'm not really sure how much time I have for this. I might get interrupted because I'll have to eat dinner eventually. I'm kind of just doing this anyway because I'm hungry and I want to distract myself. And I knew if I get into my notes and talking about this movie, I'd distract myself. I don't know if this is only the second of the Disney villain origin story movies or anything because it was. Oh, okay, that was bad timing. I don't know who keeps calling my house. We keep getting phone calls. Anyway, yeah, because there was the Maleficent one, and that one was cool. That one, I don't really remember Sleeping Beauty too well, just off the top of my head. But I could understand maybe her getting one because it's like she wasn't invited to the party and then she kind of takes her revenge. Though in that movie, they give her this backstory with like the king and her wings get stolen. It's a whole like betrayal thing. They have to add more stuff to it. Um, really. Okay, I don't know if as I'm recording if the phone that's on the table next to me if that audio is being caught by the mic. Apparently my grandmother keeps calling and then not picking up or something. Okay, sorry. Anyway, yeah. So I'm assuming this is like the second of these like villain origin story Disney movies and stuff. I feel like Cruella's a weird choice. Like we're giving out of all the Disney villains the person that wants to skin puppies and make a coat out of them an origin not really just like an origin story movie, but the fact that the whole they're these villains being the protagonists of these movies, it's more of a we're gonna you have to make them like sympathetic and stuff. So I feel like giving her that treatment is kind of weird. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't necessary. I mean, my personal favorite of like Disney villain um origin story media is the Star Kid musical Twisted, but that's just me. But I have to say I had more fun with this than I expected. Like if you just treat it as its own, I mean, with it being about like Cruella and Deville and stuff, and plenty of references to like the 100 Dalmatians, it's not like you can separate the movie from any of that. But if you pretend that it's not anything related to that movie or this character, and just as its own movie, then it's kind of fun. Cause like on one hand, I don't want any more of these villain origin story movies. I don't feel like they're really necessary. But at the same time, I liked this one and I liked Maleficent, so I guess I'm fine with them existing. Like this movie of watching Emma Stone get to be like a girl boss in these killer outfits in like 70s London is pretty cool. I'll pretty much watch her in almost anything. I say almost because there's some movies she's been in I didn't really care for, but I'll watch her in pretty much anything, so that aspect is fun. I like how she plays the character. It just feels weird. I mean, I know it's an origin story and it starts off with like Cruella's childhood and stuff. Then it also feels weird because like she doesn't really feel like the same character. Even like as an adult, once because the like her character's name is Estella, but then she has when she kind of taps into her dark side in a sense, she goes by the name Cruella, almost treated like an alter ego in a way. And even in that, acting that way, she doesn't really completely feel like how she is in 101 Dalmatians. Maybe because she's supposed to be like the protagonist here and she's a bit younger. It's kind of interesting actually because the movie's villain is basically like the Deville she'll like eventually become in 101 Dalmatians, but like a more eviler version, I guess, and less emotional of this really famous fashion designer who's called the Baroness or something, where she it's basically a really similar character, so it feels kind of weird. But let me get started on my notes. I have a lot of them actually. Um, I guess I'll just. It's weird because like the main character is Cruella, but she goes by Estella for most of the movie. So I'm not really sure which to refer to her, but I guess I'll refer to her as Cruella. I guess, which is the whole reason they have the name thing. It's kind of like in some of the Cinderella movies where it's like just well, no, not because I think with Cinderella it was like a nickname and her name is Ella. It's kind of like that where it's just something her mom calls her and then she ends up taking it as like her own name. I just assumed I'm disappointed about you know how she has like the two colored hair, the two tone hair and stuff. I didn't even think her hair would need an origin or anything either. I thought it was gonna be like maybe it's from stress or all the smoking she does later or something. She gets into some kind of hair accident, but no, her hair, or just maybe like died or whatever, but her hair is just naturally like that, and none of the other characters have like super colorful hair like that. So it just makes her look like an anime protagonist. It's kind of weird. Um, I don't really like the two colored hair. I think it looks kind of weird to me. Actually, for a lot of the movie, Cruella has red hair, which I didn't even realize was a wig until later in the movie when she removes it. I thought that she had dyed her hair because she tries doing that with like black hair dye in like an early part of the movie, but it's actually just a wig she ends up getting later that's like red hair. But I mean I've seen Emma Stone in like several movies with red hair, but it's more of like natural colored red hair. Here it's like a lot darker. But I thought it was a really good look, so then I was disappointed whenever the character would have the black and white hair. And it's kind of cool because a lot of this movie is Cruella working in the fashion company for the Duchess, or wait, no, the Baroness. Why do I keep wanting to say the Duchess? No, where it's like she's basically in disguise in a sense, of having like the red hair and the glasses, but also like kind of a trying to seem like unassuming and kind of meek. It works honestly. I remember with 100 Dalmatians, they have the thing where like Anita and Cruella have like a bit of a backstory where they know each other already. So that, but I was surprised that wasn't used more in the movie. Like it has it where they end up um, meeting each other as kids, and then much later, Anita is working as like a journalist, and Cruella recruits her to like help her with something. But you don't really get to see them together much, and they didn't really become friends as kids or develop any kind of like friendship or relationship or anything. um I don't remember with 101 Dalmatians if that's kind of how it's treated as well, but I was surprised it wasn't anything more important. Like you do get to see Anita, you do get to see Roger. I actually am glad they're not like major characters in this because it's supposed to be Cruella's story. And then with Roger, I didn't even realize that it was like the Roger either, because there's this guy that works for uh, the Baroness, and his name's Roger. I didn't even. It took me like quite a while into the movie to realize, oh, his name's Roger because he's, like Anita's Roger from like later in the other movie and stuff. And you don't get to see him and Anita interact in like the entire movie, and then the ending's kind of weird to me too, where they're living together and they get sent some puppies, Dalmatian puppies, by Cruella, which is a completely different backstory because it was like wasn't it that the dogs, like there was, I'm thinking of like the live action movie, which that one relates to this one a bit, where their dogs, they're like two people that have their dogs, and that's how they end up meeting each other, and then they like live together and stuff. I thought that's how it was, like they're meeting each other for the first time, but here it's like they already live together and they're just given the puppies which feels really weird of like, later on in like 101 Dalmatians, Cruella will be trying to take their puppies and to make the coat, but then she gives them puppies in this one as a gift. I also wasn't sure how her relation with dogs was going to be either. Because there are Dalmatians in this movie, but they're like angry all the time and trying to like attack people and stuff, but they belong to the villain. And then Cruella ends up with them at the end and just kind of has them as pets, so that feels kind of weird. But then she has a dog of her own. There's like two main dogs in this movie actually that belong to the main character. Well, the main character and her friends slash like henchmen or whatever. There's a little dog named there's a dog named Buddy. That one's Corella's, who doesn't really do much. I like does like a little bit of stuff, but not really. And then there's an absolute cutie patootie little tiny dog who's like a chihuahua or something, who's has an eye patch, I think named Wink. And Wink was just adorable, honestly. That's all I have to say on that. um but yeah, they spend a while in like Corella's childhood and stuff. I feel like the pacing of that was fine actually. And then you get to meet her mom that way, and her mom's like the nicest person in the world, but kind of wants Cruella to fit in, and you get an explanation on that later when there's like this big reveal where it turns out the Baroness is like Cruella's like birth mom, who ordered her to have her killed as a baby, and then one of her the people that works for her just ended up giving Cruella to like some random maid instead, and that maid, ended up raising Cruella and like being her mom and stuff. So then it kind of puts into perspective Cruella's mom like trying to get her to fit in so badly as to like not kind of turn into a mini Baroness. I thought that was kind of interesting. There's like this whole little speech that Cruella kind of just gives. It's like almost like a little monologue basically, when she finds out who her birth mom is, and she's saying it to like her dead mom and stuff. I thought that was actually a really nice scene. Okay, but I'm kind of jumping around a bit. The music in this was really good. I feel mixed on the music, because the movie takes place in like at first in like I think 1964 or something, or 63, and then the rest of it's in the 70s. Um, and they're all songs I like, and also specific versions of the songs. Like there's the song "Smile." It's the Judy Garland one that plays in a scene when Estella's left in a burning room. That version of the songs, I'm used to the Nat King Cole one. It was really nice. I hadn't heard the Judy Garland one before. I don't know if that was the original. Um, and then I actually kept pulling up the soundtrack on Spotify. There's like sort of official playlists and some other ones. It's just some of them aren't in the right order. Like there's the song "Feeling Good," but it's the one by Nina Simone. That was pretty cool. Um, and then there's this one scene where they have these boots are made for walking. I liked where it was. I liked the placement of some of the songs in this movie. But it also just felt like there was a billion licensed songs that were constantly playing like one after the other. It doesn't really give the soundtrack room to breathe. Like there's so many songs in the like there's a two I found the full soundtrack on Spotify. I don't think it's like an official like here's the official list. It's almost 3 hours. Not that they play every song at like full length, but I feel like that tells you just how many songs are actually in here. Um, but they were also songs that I liked and they fit the time period. It felt really weird. I'm kind of mixed on it. And then the only scene I knew about from the movie ahead of time was the one where the Dalmatians end up attacking someone, and I finally have the context of that. And the movie gives more context about it later. So it's basically that a bunch of angry Dalmatians, the ones that belong to the Baroness, but you don't know about her character at that point. They're chasing Cruella, and she dodges, and the dogs keep running, and they knock over her mom, who happens to be standing by a ledge, and she dies. And when I originally saw that, I thought that is like the dumbest way to kill off the mom, but also to get Cruella to hate like Dalmatian, to have anything against like Dalmatians. Because I wasn't sure if she even liked dogs I didn't remember from 101 Dalmatians, and in this she does. And the thing is, she doesn't even have anything against Dalmatians, or like she has one line at some point of looking at some Dalmatians and thinking, oh, they would make a nice coat, and then she has to say that she's kidding because the people around her look like horrified. But other than that, she doesn't really comment on the Dalmatians or anything. She doesn't seem to have. I thought she was gonna have like some kind of almost comedic, cartoonish like vengeance against the Dalmatians for killing her mom. I'm actually glad the movie didn't go that route. Instead, she just ends up being mad at the Baroness. But yeah, that scene in the movie itself just looked so ridiculous. Um, and then you find out that the Baroness used a whistle and forced the dogs to like kill the mom or something, which I think adding that context makes it slightly more reasonable, but it's still such a really weird scene. I mean, I guess they would have had to have Dalmatians do something bad in this movie, because eventually she's gonna want to like. I mean, it's not like she's skinning them because she hates them, from what I remember. I think it's just she wants to make them out of the coat. And she does wear one outfit that has Dalmatian spots, and the characters are like, did she skin some dogs? And the movie never really clarifies it, so. Hmm. And then I completely forgot she had the two henchmen. I think their names are Jasper and Horace. In the animated 101 Dalmatians. And they get backstory stuff too, where um, once Cruella ends up losing her mom, she like lives on the street, and then the three of them end up being like homeless thieves together. And it's kind of nice. They all seem to sort of care about each other a bit, and then later on, they're kind of less her friends and more her lackeys. And I kind of felt bad for them, like between the two of them, because the movie tries to make one of them more important than the other. Horace is just kind of like the comic relief character and doesn't get any development or anything. He's just kind of there, and then Jasper's the one that gets more focus, where throughout the movie he's commenting on like, man, Estella's being really mean and she shouldn't talk to us like this. Not that she's mean to them for like the entire movie, but it's when she kind of goes into the Cruella personality and starts trying to upstage the Baroness and everything, and eventually plot to maybe kill her. Um, that she starts being mean to her friends, and they do try to have some scenes where she sort of apologizes to them, but you know she doesn't really like care about them or anything. I kind of felt bad. I felt bad specifically for Jasper actually, because it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like I thought maybe Cruella was also being influenced by the Baroness a little bit, as sort of like an evil role model of being like, yeah, you can't care about the people that work for you or anything, but they do also try to frame it of like Cruella as a child, not that she's like evil or anything, but just kind of being a troublemaker and having to sort of suppress that. It's kind of a weird thing of like with this movie of did she eventually grow into kind of a horrible person, or was she just like that all along and is finally embracing it? I feel like the movie kind of treats it as like the second thing, honestly. I had assumed this was a prequel to the original, but then it makes the dates kind of weird, where this one starts in the 60s and then takes place in the 70s, but then the animated movie, it takes place in the 50s. So I'm assuming that means that this one has to be a prequel specifically to like the 90s live action 101 Dalmatians, the one with Glenn Close playing Cruella, because that one's set, I think, in the 90s. So that's kind of the only thing that makes sense to the movie itself never really says, but I'm kind of just you kind of just have to assume because of the time periods. um I actually wasn't sure when the original like animated 101 Dalmatians took place. I always assumed it was like 50s 60s. It just kind of had that vibe. But it's kind of interesting that way. One of the things I did really like with this movie is the outfits. The outfits are awesome. There's so many of them. I think that was like my favorite thing. Some of them kind of reminded me of like Lady Gaga's costumes a little bit, just kind of the vibe with it. Like there's this one outfit that Cruella wears where she gets dumped out of like a garbage truck, and it's made out of like book paper, but also just like random fabrics and stuff. And I thought that felt kind of like one of the you know, that was like a big thing with Lady Gaga in like the 2000s. It was just kind of making me think of that a little bit. There's a lot of narration in this movie. There's less of it towards the end, but I was getting really tired of it because it happens for like a good chunk of the movie. Where and I thought it was only going to be when Cruella was like a child, but it continues when she's an adult. I'm just constantly hearing Emma Stone narrate the character's thoughts and stuff, but it lasted for like way too long. Um, Emma Thompson as the Baroness, I thought was pretty cool. Um, it's just kind of funny because like Cruella in 101 Dalmatians is like this evil fashion designer that wants to skin puppies. So then now that she's the protagonist, even though it's also her origin story, so she's not quite at that level yet, they need someone who's even worse. So they make an even more of an like asshole fashion designer villain. That's just really funny to me. I don't know, because like with Maleficent, it's not like she was fighting an evil or fairy. I think it was just she was fighting against the kingdom and the king. You know what? I kind of just need to watch that again. I kind of want to see which of these is better. Um, but the Baroness I thought was kind of a funny character in that she's really snobby. She kind of reminds me of like Miranda Priestley in The Devil Wears Prada, especially when there's like parts of the movie when Cruella is working for her. Actually, this movie kind of does feel a bit like The Devil Wears Prada, not just because there's so much fashion, but just that kind of dynamic between the two characters, and just kind of the vibe of part of the movie. I don't really know how to explain it. Um, oh, hold on. Okay, so I went to eat dinner. That kind of took a while. I'm trying to remember where I left off. I think I was talking about The Devil Wears Prada. Yeah, this movie kind of reminds me of that. Let me see what else. I'm gonna switch over to the couch so I'm a little more comfy. I'm in my PJs. Why am I sitting in the same place as earlier? There's a character named Artie. I thought he was gonna have more of a role. He owns like a clothes shop. I thought he was pretty cool. I liked his outfits. He has like I think two or three, but the first one I really liked, and he's someone that eventually ends up on Cruella's team. Uh, some of this movie is about heists. I thought that was pretty cool because the whole thing is like there's a necklace that Cruella is given by her mom, and she ends up leaving it behind, and the Baroness ends up wearing it, and Cruella's like, "That's actually mine. I'm gonna steal it back." But Cruella is just kind of the distraction in all of these heists, and her two other friends, I guess. I don't know if I should call them friends or henchmen, because they kind of go from one to the other pretty quickly in this movie. But they're the ones that are pulling off all the cool stuff with the heist, and you get some stuff with that every once in a while in the movie. So that was pretty neat. But I like that they fail. I think the first time they try to do it where the necklace is in the wrong place, and then it ends up getting eaten by one of the Dalmatians. Oh yeah, can I just say the CGI dogs in this look really weird. Like the Dalmatians are CGI, but then the other two, or at least the little Chihuahua with the eye patch looked like it was real. I don't know about the other dogs. The Dalmatians, I think because they kept having to growl the entire movie and just look angry and bare their teeth, I'm pretty sure they were CGI. I think I'm getting kind of tired of CGI animals in um, Disney movies and stuff. It also just feels weird because I feel like if we're going off of animals, dogs, not that they're like probably easier to train, but at least probably easier to train than like other animals. I kept thinking like, why don't they have actual dogs in this movie or like actual Dalmatians? But mm, let me see what else. Um, I liked that once Cruella decides she's gonna take revenge on the Baroness and potentially kill her. Oh yeah, they keep mentioning about that because it's basically it gets to a point in the movie where Cruella and the Baroness are like actively trying to kill each other and even saying so, and that feels not that this is a kid movie or anything, but it just feels weird to hear in a Disney movie. Not that it's probably the first time either. I'm sure not, but I feel like that always just kind of throws me off a little bit. Um, but I like that uh, Cruella, like, she's during the nighttime, um, basically upstaging the Baroness at like all these fancy parties and stuff, where she shows up in a cool outfit and then leaves. But then during the day, she's still working as like the Baroness's assistant or something. And when she kind of gains this newfound confidence, she's like purposely trying to piss off the Baroness, and that was kind of funny to me. I'd kind of assumed that Cruella had actually like quit her job there or something, but I thought it's pretty smart she still continues to work there because she gets to see like all the Baroness's secrets and stuff and is able to sabotage things from the inside. So that was pretty neat. Um, and then I think that's when around the time in the movie, and this was already I think like an hour in, that I finally noticed Roger, and I was like, wait a minute, I remember a character named Roger from 101 Dalmatians. Um, I think it's just because I didn't know what Roger and Anita were gonna look like in this movie, and they look different from like the animated ones, so I think that was kind of throwing me off a little bit. Um, but I do feel bad. I didn't. I think because like in 101 Dalmatians, you get to see more of Roger, and he's very like kind of whimsical and musical and stuff. I always thought he was a cool character, but he just feels different like personality wise in this, where he doesn't really. He's just kind of there. So I just assumed he just happened to be a guy named Roger. I don't know. Let me see. There's this one part where there's this shiny pieces of gold that Cruella ends up attaching to a dress, and then she tricks the Baroness into thinking she's gonna steal it, and then you go to get a closer look at the dress, and it actually turns out to be like hundreds of moths. Like the moths, I think it was like actually eggs or something inside of the gold or whatever. But I thought that was pretty cool actually. I kind of wish we could have seen the dress because it kind of looks like it's been eaten by moths, and then you see that there's moths sort of resting on it. I think it would have been cool if there was like a shot of the dress of like a bunch of moths with their wings out, and that being like almost like a quote unquote pattern on the dress. I kind of expected it to turn into that. I think one of my favorite parts of the movie actually is that Cruella has her own fashion show that takes place in this park, but it's also a rock concert. So they have all these lights and stuff, and there's like music. I thought that was just really cool, honestly. And then they have this reveal, but I had already talked about it, of like the Baroness being Cruella's actual mom and everything. Um, I feel not surprised for that character. Because, like, the Baroness at first comes off as, like, oh, she's, like, a really mean fashion designer. And then you find out, like, yeah, she tried to kill her daughter as a baby. And, um, there's all this other stuff. Like, there's this part where Cruella mentions, like, oh, you killed my mom. And the Baroness is like, you're gonna have to be more specific about that. Which I feel like implies that she's had probably way more people killed. I wasn't really expecting that. But you find out that Cruella is the owner of everything, like the Baroness's mansion and all this other stuff. And they do that sort of thing with origin story movies where at the end the characters have enough of their recognizable items or whatever. And you know how it's gonna like play out in the next movie where um, Hall, I think of the name of it, the mansion that Cruella has in like 101 Dalmatians, is actually just the Baroness's house and everything. Like I had thought, and I need to rewatch 101 Dalmatians. Cruella with all of her like fancy coats and stuff. I'm thinking of like the animated one in my head as I'm talking about this. I just assumed she like had money and knew all this stuff about fashion, but then they have it with this one where it's like she comes from a poorer background and then ends up living on the streets, but just kind of has all this fashion knowledge and stuff. I feel like I need to watch at least one version of 101 Dalmatians again because I feel like this will kind of, I don't know, put it into a new perspective or something, even though this is made after some of the 101 Dalmatian movies. I think I have the animated one on VHS. I know for sure I had the 90s one with Glenn Close playing the Cruella character, the live action one. On VHS. I remember I used to watch it when I was younger. It was at like a different house that I was staying at though at the time, and I don't know where that VHS is. I think we just someone in the family um gave it away, and I'm bummed because I haven't seen that since I was a kid, and I feel like that's the one that connects more with this movie, so I feel like I needed to watch this and watch that one. Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to see if it's on like YouTube TV or something. It's actually part of the reason I'm going on like a little bit of a being sidetracked here. I'm trying to watch some of these Disney movies before I go and visit my aunt for a while because she has Disney Plus. So I thought, oh, that could be my chance. I could watch like a sequel to something or whatever. I do have a list already of some movies I want to do. Like I was gonna watch Enchanted and then I was gonna watch Disenchanted because I found Enchanted on YouTube TV, but there's some parts of Enchanted. There's like one specific song in Enchanted I find really annoying. And I feel bad because it's a really good movie, but I think because of that, I kind of just don't really want to watch Enchanted. I don't know. But it is good. I remember when I was younger, I found Amy Adams' character actually a little bit annoying. I think because she was so perky all the time, she's almost like a parody of like Disney princess. I mean, Enchanted does feel like it's a parody of like Disney princess movies, so that's kind of the point. But I know I'll probably be like really liking it again once I watch. I'm debating it. We'll see. We'll see. Um, the final confrontation, it takes place at night. There's like a couple of scenes at night in this movie, but I don't like the lighting. It's too hard to see. And it's like that's when we get to like the most important part of the movie, so that was kind of a bummer. I do like how it plays out though. Where throughout the parts of the movie, like in the second half or so, Cruella is telling Jasper of like how she's thinking of just straight up killing the Baroness, and Jasper's trying to talk her out of it. And then at the end, she doesn't actually kill the Baroness. Instead, it's the other way around, where the Baroness tries to apologize to Cruella for trying to kill her, and then when she finds out, actually, it's only she only tries to apologize when she finds out that it's her daughter, and saying, because the Baroness is like the most vain character in this entire movie, where she's like, oh, of course you're brilliant, you're mine, and then she tries to push Cruella off. No, she does push Cruella off a cliff, and the only reason Cruella survives is because she knew the Baroness would probably try something like that, and has a parachute. Cruella's even standing in like almost the exact same spot from like where her mother got pushed to. Um, oh wait, I already talked about the end. Yeah, where she gives the puppies to Roger and Anita, which yeah, I now I need to really watch 101 Dalmatians because I don't remember it playing out like that, and that just felt like a weird thing at the end. But whatever, yeah. So I liked it as a movie, as just like a, if we call it like a generic movie, I guess. I think it is kind of cool. Um, and Emma Stone looks like she's having a lot of fun playing this character. But at the same time, I feel like the character Cruella didn't really need an origin story movie, and it makes me it doesn't make me root for her character or anything, like going into 101 Dalmatians, or change any with the Maleficent movie. It made me want to rewatch Sleeping Beauty, and I was like, huh, this is kind of cool. Like that one felt like very like more magical, I guess, than Sleeping Beauty. I mean, this one definitely does have it like a completely different vibe from like 101 Dalmatians because it takes place in like a different time period and everything. But I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm having some kind of thought, but I feel like I can't really put it into words. So I'm just gonna end it there. But yeah, like as a movie, I liked it. I don't know if I'd watch it again, but as a Cruella movie, I'm like, it didn't need to exist, and kind of just more about it. It's, yeah. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I still have the animated 101 Dalmatians. I'll have to check because I had gotten some Disney VHS movies from my one of my cousins like a couple years ago, and that now I have Aladdin and Atlantis. I gotta rewatch some of those though. The one I really want to find is somehow on like DVD or VHS or something is Treasure Planet because I love that movie, and I doubt it's gonna appear at my local Goodwill. I really got to go back to that again. Or I might be visiting my brother in a couple months. He has Disney Plus, so I'll get to watch more Disney movies. But he told me, yeah, I'll take you to some thrift stores, and you can. He knows I want to go DVD hunting. And last time I went, it was pretty cool. I found. I'm going off track, but I don't care. Um, I found the musical Chicago and one of my favorite movies, AI Artificial Intelligence, and I found a bunch of animated short films based on The Matrix. So that was a really cool find for me. Um, but who knows what I'll find this time? So we'll see, we'll see. But there should be more Disney reviews on the way, or hopefully soon. It just depends if I can access Disney Plus in like a week or so at my relative's house. We'll see. All right. Bye bye.